Good afternoon, everybody. First thing I want to do is acknowledge all of you for being here today. By being here today, you demonstrate that you care about the Earth and what global warming is doing to it. And this environmental stuff takes commitment. This isn't easy. What's that saying? That 80% of success is just showing up? We need to keep showing up, and it'll get done. Before I get into my main topic, I think some context is in order here. There was a time that if you had asked me what I thought about this global warming thing, I would have raised a very skeptical eyebrow and would have said it was a lot of bunk. I came to realize, however, that opinion was based on no information whatsoever. So I figured it might be a good idea for me to educate myself about the topic of global warming. What I learned was so compelling, I was inspired to write my book, A World to Come Home To. I found that the public is grossly misinformed, even disinformed, about not only the severity and the immediacy of the global warming problem, but also the fact that all the technology we need to actually fix it is fully developed right now and can be deployed on a mass scale. If someone sticks a gun to your head and says, your money or your life, you're not faced with an economic issue, you're faced with a survival issue. Global warming is not an economic issue. It's a survival issue. The reality is, if we don't stop heating the planet very soon, global warming will accelerate and will wipe out 90% of the world's population in our own grandchildren's lifetime. These are the infants, toddlers, and preschoolers who are alive right now. To prevent this catastrophe, we must mount a World War II-style all-out war against global warming. We need to begin that war post-haste. We need to deploy all the technology we have available to us, and we need to enlist all the manpower we can muster. If we don't act, or act too little, today's young children will witness the end of civilization as we know it. Trying to solve this problem by living in a smaller and smaller box and constricting ourselves more and more isn't going to work. We can't shrink small enough to fix global warming. In my opinion, the shrinking approach stems from a long-standing belief in scarcity and lack. Instead, we need to raise our level of thinking and approach this problem from a completely different frame of reference. The Earth system is inherently abundant. For example, a fruit tree in a single season will produce hundreds, even thousands of pieces of fruit. Each one of those pieces of fruit will contain 1 to hundreds of seeds. So in a single season, that one tree will produce far more than it needs for its mere continuance. Nature gushes with abundance. The Earth's paradigm is one of generating from within and flowing outward in ceaseless profusion. We need to mimic what the Earth does. Everything we need to create an Earth-friendly, technologically advanced, people-oriented civilization that can provide us with more electricity, water, and fuel than we could ever use exists right now. No shrinking, sacrificing, or doing without will be required. I lay out such a framework in my book in something I call a perpetual abundance engine. It's an infrastructure that is non-invasive, non-polluting, the supply is unlimited, and it can be maintained in perpetuity. Further, it can be fully implemented before the middle of this century, and building it will create a 6 to 12% sustained annual growth rate for an entire generation. All we need to do is do it. For our children to have a world that they can come home to, we must end global warming now. I'm kind of emotional about this topic, in case you didn't know. One of the ways that we can raise our level of thinking is to consider what most people might think of as a new mode of transportation. Transportation is the weak link in solving the global warming problem. In California, the single largest source of carbon dioxide emissions at 37% is transportation. The problem is that we are completely dependent upon our internal combustion engine vehicles. So if we're going to make any serious headway against global warming, we need to dump the fossil burners. To replace the internal combustion engine vehicle, we need an automotive technology that can essentially duplicate the ease with which we use our cars today. The reality is that most people are very busy and frequently encounter irregular driving patterns. As such, most people's major considerations in getting from point A to point B are convenience, speed, and comfort. Our cars have afforded us unparalleled freedom of movement. We have nearly 50,000 miles of interstate highways across the continental United States. We have millions and more miles of other roads and highways. We have 170,000 gas stations across the country. This network and our internal combustion vehicles have let us go anywhere, anytime, as fast as we want, as far as we want, for as long as we want, virtually without limitation. Fuel cell vehicles can fulfill that expectation today. So what is a fuel cell electric vehicle, or just an FCV? Well, it's an electric car, because an electric motor is used to drive the wheels. But there's no engine, as we are familiar with. But rather than repeatedly storing and draining electrons from the battery, the fuel cell vehicle makes its own electricity while it's being driven. And the device that makes that electricity is the fuel cell. By the way, there's no plug. The first commercially viable fuel cells were developed by NASA in the early 1960s as part of the space program. They were first used on the Gemini missions to eliminate the need for heavy batteries. The rocket ship on the rocket fuel on the ship, that was liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, was passed through the fuel cell. The reaction within the fuel cell generated the electricity to power the electrical equipment on the ship, and the byproduct, which was water, was used by the astronauts to drink during their trip in space. Pretty ingenious, actually. Tagging off of this, General Motors, then the largest company on the planet, decided to see if a fuel cell could be used to power a car instead of an internal combustion engine. So in 1964, they put 250 of their engineers, scientists, and technicians to work on the task. After 2 years, they unveiled their finished product, which was a converted GMC handy van that they dubbed the Electro Van. And it worked. It had a 100-mile range and a top speed of 70 miles an hour. And it literally ran on rocket fuel. The two large cryogenic tanks in the van's interior held liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. So though the concept proved valid, it wasn't practical at the time due to the level of technology and also economic considerations. So interest in fuel cells waned and went dormant for the next several decades. In the 1990s, the automakers were beginning to look ahead to a time when we may actually run out of oil. And they asked themselves, can we develop an alternative form of propulsion for cars that is not, that's not internal combustion engine. Thank you so much. Yeah. Oh, cheapers. Got myself lost here. So they went to work on the task. And Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Mercedes-Benz, they all started working on fuel cell technology. Today's FCVs run on compressed hydrogen gas and oxygen from the outside air. It may surprise you, but fuel cell vehicles have actually been on the road since 2002. They actually predate the hybrids and the battery electrics we see today, yet fuel cell vehicles are still virtually unknown. So how does an FCV work? Well, you fill the fuel tank with hydrogen from a dispenser, just like you fill your car right now. The hydrogen from the tank flows to the fuel cell assembly. The hydrogen combines with the oxygen from the outside air. The reaction within the fuel cell creates the electric current to power the car. And the only exhaust is water vapor. You know, that stuff clouds are made of. As they exist right now, fuel cell vehicles can replace the internal combustion engine. The existing designs have a range of anywhere from 250 to 300 miles. They're fast to refuel, typically around 5 minutes, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And they're comfortable. They're regular cars. Our Tucson out there is a regular production vehicle. We can take it across town or across the country with equal ease. My experience in driving our fuel cell is that it is largely insensitive to things like speed and also use of auxiliaries like air conditioning. You drive it like a regular car. You put gas in it and you go. You don't think about it. I consistently get 52 to 55 miles per kilogram in all manner of driving conditions. By the way, 1 kilogram of hydrogen is equal to 1 gallon of gasoline, so it's a real easy comparison. Fuel cell vehicles are designed to operate in wide temperature range extremes, like the blistering heat of Death Valley, where it can get 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and extreme cold north of the Arctic Circle, where it can get well below 20 below zero. Fuel cell vehicles are designed to have longevity, not requiring replacement at all. People will typically replace a car after 150, 200,000 miles, the top end. Well, in fuel cell design, they don't think in terms of miles, they think in terms of hours of operation. So the guideline that manufacturers use for the current crop fuel cells is a design life of 5,000 hours. Experience is showing something else, however. Fuel cell buses have been on the road for the last 10 years. They were originally designed to have a life of 3,000 hours. Sunline Transit in Palm Springs area has fuel cell buses that have been on the road for more than 7,000 hours. And AC Transit up in the San Francisco Bay Area, they have buses powered by fuel cells that have logged over 20,000 hours of operation. You're talking about 500, 600, 700, maybe even 800,000 miles of driving experience. And if they're properly maintained, they just go and go and go. Fuel cell vehicles are also scalable. If you want to increase the range, you just put in a bigger fuel tank. For example, there are 420-mile range fuel cells already in development. And you're going to add just a couple minutes to your fueling time. It's trivial to do. Vehicle size. You want a bigger vehicle? Put in a bigger fuel cell and a bigger tank. It's that easy. SUVs, monster trucks, motorhomes, all those can be accommodated by fuel cell technology. As I said, buses are already on the road. Medium to heavy-duty trucks are already in development. So everything from forklifts to semis can be handled by fuel cells, as they exist right now. To demonstrate to myself that a fuel cell vehicle can perform just like an internal combustion engine vehicle, I decided to simulate a day out of a typical road trip. You know, the kind where you get up early, you eat breakfast, you hit the road, and you drive, and you drive, and you drive. And you stop for gas and potty breaks and maybe hit the drive-thru. You end about 5 p.m., eat some dinner, get some shut-eye, get up the next day and do it again. So one day I started out at about 7:30 in the morning with a full tank of gas on a pre-planned route. I drove 521 miles. My total driving time was 8 hours and 20 minutes. My average speed was 63 miles per hour. My maximum speed was 85. I used the air conditioning essentially all day. I also took some significant grades like the El Cajon Pass. And at about 5 p.m., got 53 miles per kilogram on the trip. Here's the kicker. My total en route refueling time for the entire trip was 8 minutes. 3.5 minutes at the first stop, 4.5 at the second. Fuel cell vehicles can replace the internal combustion engine right now. We've been driving our fuel cell for over a year now. We've logged over 11,000 miles. We love this car. It is actually exceeding our expectations. It's quiet. It's like you're gliding everywhere. Even at 70 miles an hour, it's like sitting in your living room. There's no vibration. The only sound is the tires on the pavement. It's quick and responsive. You would never believe that that car weighs 4,900 pounds. When someone first rides in our car, usually the first two things out of their mouth are, wow, followed by, I want one of these. In my opinion, once people understand and experience this technology, they won't want to go back to anything else. So what about the deployment of FCVs? Well, the manufacturers are lining up. Honda was the first to introduce a fuel cell back in 2007 with their Clarity. They leased out 20 cars. By the way, there were 80,000 applications for those 20 vehicles. You talk about demand. Mercedes-Benz followed up next in 2011 with their B-Class F-Cell. They made 100 of those. Hyundai followed up in 2014 with their Hyundai Tucson fuel cell. It's the one we've got. Production run was about 500. By the way, it was the world's first full production fuel cell vehicle. Toyota brought out their Mirai late last year. Honda is bringing out their updated Clarity later this year. I've heard, but I haven't confirmed that Hyundai is going to bring out an updated fuel cell in 2017. Mercedes-Benz is looking to release a full-size SUV fuel cell in 2018. In the 2020 timeframe, there are a whole list of other manufacturers that are already gearing up for release, like Audi, BMW, Ford, General Motors, Lexus, Nissan, Volkswagen. They're all getting in on the act. So, fueling stations. We got this great technology, but almost nowhere to get any gas. Now, in California, they put together a consortium called the California Fuel Cell Project, CAFCP.org, to foster station development within California. A little over a year ago, there were only 11 stations. Today, there are 22. Woohoo! And their plan is to have 100 stations in their initial rollout program within the next 2 or 3 years. And they're strategically placing them throughout the state so that it will allow fuel cell drivers to be able to travel virtually anywhere in the state. Their feeling is that with that number of stations in place, it will foster self-proliferating station development after that. Other states also, up like the Northeast, the Boston to Washington corridor is looking to put in 12 stations. In 2014, there was a memorandum of understanding between 8 states for fostering zero-emission vehicles. So they both battery electrics and fuel cells. Germany has a consortium to build 400 fuel cell stations, or hydrogen stations. Tokyo, their government has committed $330 million to showcase hydrogen at the 2020 Olympics. The Scandinavian countries, Denmark has 9 stations. Yeah, small country, maybe that's enough. I don't know. Norway is going to build 20 additional stations. Yes, Virginia, there are FCVs in Norway. In California, the AQMD sees that the mainstay of cars in the future will be fuel cells. By 2040, every car sold within this state needs to be a zero-emission vehicle, whether that's a battery electric or fuel cell. By 2050, they see the majority of the cars being fuel cells, followed up with battery electrics, and then the dregs being the aging fossil burners, which includes hybrids of all kinds. I could go on, but I'm afraid I'm going to get the hook if I go any farther. So I'm going to take some questions, but first let me conclude with this technology is amazing. I believe it's the linchpin that can actually turn the corner on global warming. It can virtually eliminate automotive emissions and make oil obsolete. I believe that once this technology takes hold, it's going to proliferate very quickly. All we need to do is do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Craig, and thank you for telling me that my brand new Prius hybrid is a dinosaur. I appreciate the honesty between friends, and I'll take that as a compliment. Okay, we have time for a few questions. Here, let's go for it.
I got this book by Craig Hover, and it's the best book I've read on global warming. It really, really makes a big impression, and it's easy reading. You can buy it up the street at Half Off Books, just a couple doors up that way. It's amazing, and it really gets you involved.
It's a book that is so easy reading. Finally, and it answers so many questions. It really is an important purchase.
What's the possibility of retrofitting all these old bodies, all these old vehicles? Like I have an old RV from '89. Impossible, right? It's just...
It will be a little difficult.
Yeah, I'd say.
The cars are heavy because the technology, the fuel cell technology overcomes that. But you've got all kinds of other problems like the chassis itself and the braking system and suspension on, and how you configure it to accommodate the tank itself. So, probably not.
It's not.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? Wayne Taylor.
I've been fascinated by these hydrogen cars, and I know, well, okay, 2 questions. The first question about the hydrogen tank.
Yeah.
And do you use cadmium foam? at 4 atmospheres, or what kind of tank, and how thick is the tank?
Well,
and all that?
it's a specialized design that launches off of natural gas kind of tanks, but they are especially designed that the walls on the tank are like that thick, and it's a carbon filament that's been specially designed to keep the little tiny hydrogen molecules from leaking out. They are extremely robust. Mercedes-Benz has over 7 million miles of
Crash tested, and
They've been
blow
through
up.
crash testing. They've tried to wreck them. In fact, you could take a 50 caliber armor-piercing gun and fire it at close range at one of those tanks, and it wouldn't pierce it. In fact, you'd have to fire a second bullet just like it right behind the first one before you'd finally put a hole in the tank. So they're pretty robust. So,
And then the second part of it is that the really important thing about hydrogen, of course, is that it can't be thought of as a resource, so you have to produce it using energy. So you want to comment about the production of the hydrogen and the economics of that, and how to make it so it doesn't contribute to CO2.
right. Yeah, as has been explained and is correct, hydrogen is called an energy carrier, where it transports energy from one medium to another. The way hydrogen is made for vehicular and other use, there are two primary methods right now. One is through electrolysis, where electric current is passed through water, which then separates out the hydrogen and the oxygen molecules. They typically release the oxygen to the atmosphere, then store the hydrogen in tanks until it needs to be used. So once it goes through the fuel cell, then that amount of hydrogen recombines with the same amount of oxygen from the air to create the electricity coming out, and then the water vapor that comes out simply goes up into the atmosphere and then recondenses as clouds and rains back on the earth again. So and if you're using completely renewable electricity, it's a perfect closed cycle. Nothing's consumed. You can maintain it forever. You can use as much as you want. So, as far as economics of fuel, the DOE has set guidelines that the target price for hydrogen should be $4 a kilogram. Okay. Well, on a per mile basis, that equates to $1.60 a gallon for gasoline. Okay. A lot of the production facilities around here, like Cal State LA Station, they are in the $6 to $8 range of cost right now. Sunline Transit, because they make so much of it every day, they're actually at the $4 per kilogram target. So it will be very competitive and actually better than gasoline over the long run. But yeah, there's still a cost to it because it takes money to go from point A to point B. So does that answer your question? Hi.
Hey, Craig.
Yes.
Yeah, I, of course, bought your book right away and read it, and it makes all kinds of total sense. It just very straightforward, and I can't figure out. In fact, I'm still thinking about going ahead with it, and I'm in a position where I can. Why isn't it moving faster? I went to a Honda dealership, and they didn't even want to talk to me about it. That's the part I don't understand. I'm a simple person, and I can't see anything wrong with it. And I like to look for things wrong for something,
It's an interesting chicken and egg kind of process we're going through. Just on the deployment side, the manufacturers have all these cars from all these manufacturers basically just waiting in the wings, but they want to make sure there's going to be fueling stations available so that people have places to get gas. I mean gas, not hydrogen, not gasoline. So it's a gradual unveiling. It's going a little far slower than it needs to. Personal opinion, there are probably certain industries that wouldn't want this technology out there because it could be deleterious to their bottom line. I think I'm putting that as gently as I can.
Now you're getting to the bottom line of my question.
Yeah.
They call it politics.
Yeah, politics, that's right.
Okay.
So the tide is turning. More and more, in fact, I just saw there's a bill 2673 or something like that. It was actually initiated by Republican Congress Assemblyman Harper for taking some of the road use taxes and diverting them into hydrogen station development. Well, Governor Schwarzenegger, he started the whole hydrogen highway thing here in California. So we recognize that there's a need for this stuff. It's a delicate, tricky situation. All we can do is just keep pushing on it. And I think that's one of the things I like about this forum and being able to talk to people about this technology is the more people know about this, it gets into our collective consciousness, the more we shift the tide. So there will come a point where it'll turn. Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Paul.